We'll now take a look at different ways to find the equation of a line. So as you may recall, we have two forms that we can use to find the equation of a line. We have slope-intercept form, which is the equation y is equal to mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. If you're going to use slope-intercept form, you need to have the slope and you need to know the y-intercept. We also have a formula called point-slope form. This is the equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where m is the slope and x1, y1 is the point. If you're going to use point-slope, you need to have the slope and also know a particular point. One thing that is worth pointing out is that regardless of the form that you're using, whether you're using slope-intercept or point-slope, in each case you have to know the slope. So I can't use slope-intercept without knowing the slope, and I can't use point-slope if I don't know the slope. So keep that in mind as we start to look at some examples. So our first example says to find the equation of the line which has a slope of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note that my slope is 5. And I have a y-intercept of 0, negative 7. So note that we are given the y-intercept and we're given the slope. And so therefore it would make sense for us to be using slope-intercept form. We have the slope and we have the y-intercept. So I'm going to go ahead and write my formula down. Y is equal to mx plus b. I'm going to plug a 5 in for the slope. And for the y-intercept, I'm going to plug in a negative 7. And so the answer to this problem would be y is equal to 5x minus 7. For our next example, we're told that we want to find the equation of a line that has slope of negative 5. So again, I'm going to make a note that my slope is going to be negative 5 and passes through the point 2, negative 3. So we have the slope given and we have a point given. So remember that if you have the slope and you have the point, you should be using point-slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I'll go ahead and write my formula down. Now remember that your point is your x1 and your y1. And so now we're ready to plug in. So in place of the y1, I'm going to plug a negative 3. In place of the slope, I'm going to plug a negative 5. And in place of the x1, I'll plug a 2. Now we're ready to simplify. So y minus negative 3 becomes y plus 3. We're going to distribute on the right. So negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. In most cases, you'll want to solve your final answer for y. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that by subtracting 3 from both sides of the expression. And so my final answer will be y is equal to negative 5x plus 7. Now, these first two problems are fairly straightforward in that they give you exactly what you need. In our first example, we were given the slope and the intercept, therefore we used slope-intercept formula. In the second example, we were given the slope and a point, therefore we used point-slope. In our final example, note that we're given 2 points. Find the equation of a line that passes through the points -7, 1 and -9, -5. Recall that when I gave you the formulas in the beginning, we made a point of saying that regardless of the format that you're using, that you are going to have to know the slope. That is true for both formulas that we use for finding the equation of a line. So with that in mind, as I begin this last problem, the first thing that I'm going to do is calculate the slope for my 2 points. So recall that your formula for slope, we have y2 minus y1 and x2 minus x1 in the bottom. Remember that we've noted that it's a good idea to label your points. So this is your first x and your first y. This is your second x and your second y. So now we're ready to plug in. So in place of the y2, I'm going to put a -5. In place of the y1, I'm going to put a +1. In place of the x2, I'm going to put a -9. And in place of the x1, I'll put a -7. And then we'll simplify. So -5 minus 1 on the top is going to give me a -6. -9 minus a -7 is going to give me a -2. And -6 divided by -2 is going to be +3. So now I have the slope, and I have 2 points. Now note that neither point is the y-intercept point because that y-intercept point would begin with 0. So I just have 2 regular points. I'm going to go ahead and use the -7 and the 1, but you actually could use either point that you would like. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I have the point and I have the slope, so I'm going to use my point-slope formula. And I'm going to plug in. So again, I'm just going to note that the -7 is the x1 and the +1 is the y1, and we have the slope. All right, so plugging in place of the y1, I'm going to be putting a 1. In place of the m for the slope, I'm going to put a 3. And in place of the x1, I'm going to put a -7. Then we'll work at simplifying. So I'm going to have y minus 1 on the left and 3 times x plus 7 on the right. We'll then distribute the 3. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 7 is 21. And again, most of the time you're going to be asked to solve your final answer for y. And so we'll add 1 to both sides. So we're going to be looking at y is equal to 3x plus 22 as the equation for our line.